Mr. Benson.
It's Ms. Naughton, right?
Yes, sir.
Very impressive. And it's idealistically wonderful, and I hope pragmatically possible. My problem is that didn't talk anything about the funding for this, because this is a magnificent school. Charter schools generally have had mixed results throughout this country.
Absolutely.
And what really would make it work in a situation like this is superimpose a great deal of aftercare with caseworkers and other things that are necessary to follow up on what's happening. I'm just wondering how you're financing all this.
Well, first, we're not bringing bags of money with us. So let me be really clear. We do not bring any financing with us. But what we do bring is the experience of people who can figure out ways to craft each portion of the redevelopment. So you would look at each piece separately and say, what are the sources available, for example, for education? And you'd break that down further and say, what are the sources that might be available to support early learning? What are the sources available to support K-8? What are the sources to support high school? And really start then to develop that and figure out what public sources are available, what private financing techniques might be available, and whether there's a gap that would have to be filled with philanthropy. So you look at each piece. It's like biting or eating an elephant. You know, you do it one bite at a time. And that's what we do. It's the same thing around the housing piece, is to look and say, well, what are the opportunities? What are the federal opportunities that might be available? What are other state and local sources that might be available? And how will we craft a financing plan? We don't know the answers to that today. We know, though, that we've got a lot of smart folks who, working together, can figure out what those resources are and what the possibilities might be. But today, we don't know the answers to any of those questions.
Councilwoman Burrs.
Thank you very much. I was smiling as I was looking at those schools. I grew up in Atlanta, and I'm very familiar with East Lake and the schools you talked about, and you're to be congratulated for the education piece. It's great. I come from a deprived area called Buckhead, where unfortunately we didn't get to be with everyone, and that's too bad. Two very practical questions. As you replace an area where people are living with new construction and mixed usage, what happens to the displaced people?
That is such an important piece, and every community is different. But part of the planning process on the front end would be working with the community, working with all the resources to make sure that everybody has a good plan for a temporary relocation site and understands what the opportunities might be to return to the site. But I can't tell you exactly what the plan for Chattanooga would be, because we haven't started that process. But it is so important. You know, back when we were on the front end of East Lake Meadows, I worked for the Atlanta Housing Authority, and my interests were protecting the residents to make sure that they had good opportunities. And we were able to craft something that worked, frankly, really, really well for people. And I would expect that you would be able to do the same thing in Chattanooga. But you know, the genius is in the details, and how you attract, or how you look at those issues, and how you make plans, and how you bring resources so that no one is hurt, that everybody has a good place to move to that, frankly, is better than the one they left, and understands what the opportunities are long term, is a critical part of the early planning.
Madam Chair, if I may,
Certainly.
follow up. So what you're talking about is really two levels of building, and let me elaborate what I'm saying. In order for people to be in quality space while they're waiting for quality space, you're talking about two levels of moving around. I'm trying to get my arms around that. I'm not, obviously you're not going to design our plan, I get that. People are moving twice, and does it mean that all the people that move out, because it's mixed, only a portion of them would be able to move back? Is that?
That was the case in East Lake, but I could not possibly predict what the case would be in Chattanooga. Let me share with you our experience in East Lake, so I can put some numbers around this and share with you what happened, and then you know, you can kind of play off of that. In Eastlake, about 400 families lived in Eastlake Meadows when we started the revitalization. All of them were relocated temporarily during the revitalization process because the old units needed to be demolished so the new ones could be built. 65% of those families took Section 8 vouchers and moved to wherever they chose to move using those vouchers. The remaining 35% relocated to other public housing communities during the relocation period. When the units came back, when the new units came back online, everyone was invited to come back. We knew there weren't going to be enough spots on campus to fit everybody who used to live on Eastlake. We knew from the beginning that not everybody could come back. Our planning assumption was that everybody would want to. That proved not to be the case, but that was our assumption. So there were very clear priorities put in place, frankly, by the resident planning committee about who would have the first right to come back to the community. And the general rule was the longer you had lived in Eastlake, your priority was to come back. What we found out over time is that families who took the Section 8 vouchers were largely happy with that move and did not want to come back because they liked the voucher program. The families who had relocated to other public housing were more likely to want to come back to the villages of Eastlake.
So that was an option.
That was an option, absolutely.
All right, one last question.
Sure.
I think that this is a great, terrific project. One of the externalities, along with people wanting property there and the value of the property going up, is this a possibility for local labor to come in and be part of this so that local economy is helped that way as well?
Absolutely. In my mind, that the failure to do that would be to miss the boat, or to miss a big piece of the boat. If you were going to embark on this kind of economic development project that had a lot of new apartment homes being built, maybe a new school being built, there are a lot of construction jobs, a lot of other kinds of jobs that get created. An important part of the planning on the front end is making sure that people who live in the neighborhood are prepared to get some of those jobs. So sometimes that means working with the local workforce development programs to make sure they've been targeting that target neighborhood to make sure people are ready to get those jobs with the right skills and the right opportunities, right workforce development, so they can take advantage of that. So I completely agree with that. I'll be honest with you, our guys in Indianapolis missed the boat on that. They didn't do as good a job. Our guys in New Orleans did a fabulous job on that. So that's one of the lessons we've learned, is not to assume that people know how to do that. So we support them in thinking about how to hire contractors who know how to work with the neighborhood and get people jobs. Thank you.
Councilman Murphy.
Chattanooga is not Atlanta. We're clearly not as big. In thinking about area that we may have available, you know, I know of one site where co-located at one location is approximately 42 acres of available property held in various different government hands. But also within a very short distance of that site are dozens and dozens of other already in government hands properties that would amount to dozens more acres. Has anybody had a situation where they've tried to do the purpose-built model not purely on a 200-acre campus? In other words, where you're going to do 40 acres here, and then over there is where the school is going to go, and it may not be, you know, maybe 2 blocks away. And over there is where that new Y that we propose, a new recreation facility, is going to go, and that's, you know, another 2 blocks in another direction. Has anybody done that? Because I don't know of any available property in Chattanooga that would kind of fit the bill of some of the projects you've been talking about.
Our framework is based on a neighborhood, and it includes a significant amount of multifamily that's delivered in a mixed income environment. We know that our framework doesn't work in single family neighborhoods, even when there's been lots of disinvestment. It just takes so long to acquire enough properties to be able to build at a scale, and that kind of transformative scale that you need, that doesn't work well for this framework. That being said, if you have a variety of properties that might be 10 acres, and then very close there's another 40 acres, and there's another 20 acres. You know, you could certainly look at that and see whether that makes sense. It's hard for me to respond to any one particular idea, but it would be up to the Chattanooga leadership to really take a look and see what neighborhood would make sense for this. Thinking about what is the place where which of the neighborhoods is this most likely to be successful. And availability of land is one piece of whether it's likely to be successful, but it's not the only piece.
Councilman McGarry. Oh, sorry, Councilman.
And has any aspect of the process included commercial development, or has that just been an ancillary benefit where the market follows the development?
Commercial is almost always part of the plan, but the conventional wisdom is that commercial follows residential development. So what you saw, for example, in Eastlake is the apartments were built from 1996 through 2000 or so, and then the grocery store came a year later. And what we're seeing again in New Orleans, the same thing. 500 units of apartments, another 400 units planned, another 300 units. Grocery stores and other retail operators are now interested in that part of town because there's enough households, number one, and enough households with expendable income too, that it attracts them to the neighborhood. So I would say generally everybody wants to bring grocery stores, drugstores, banks, and other kinds of neighborhood-serving retail to the community, but that typically follows the residential development.
Councilman McGarry.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for coming this afternoon. When I was looking at the map, I too smiled. I lived in Atlanta for 4 years myself, and I'm very familiar with the area that you have indicated that Eastlake is located, because actually I went to church there, so it's an interesting point that you mentioned in regard to the faith-based connection. My church was actually very much involved in a mixed income endeavor, so I certainly appreciate you coming, and it's been good to hear what's been proposed. My questions are not particularly for you, Mel, they're actually for the mayor.
Sure.
Someone asked if the mayor would actually approach the podium. Okay. Thank you, sir. And given the information we just heard, I'm curious about next steps. Principally, the site selected. Has there been a site selected in Chattanooga? And if so, how was that site selected? And what are the next steps going forward if indeed we are to pursue a purpose-built project?
No, there has not been a site selected, although we have tentatively looked at the Harriet Tubman site, looked at Poss Homes, which is clear, and the west side.
With that,
there's a lot of public input yet to be had. I think the presentation focused on the fact that they had a lot of public input from the selected site, and we could look forward to seeing that sort of thing in Chattanooga, which of course we're very famous for, having public input.
what is your vision, Mayor, regarding moving forward? Is there a timeline that you have in place, or is this pretty much at this point just information session? What is the goal ultimately?
It's information, but we've gone through a couple of preliminary dances with Atlanta and with Purpose Built, and I think that we know enough about it to feel that this is a promising avenue for many of our neighborhoods, particularly our neighborhoods that are dominated by older public housing developments, and that we should move forward as quickly as the council wishes to move forward. Okay.
Are there any other questions from council members? I'd like to, since there are no further lights, Mr. Gilbert, you. Okay, thank you, if you'll indulge me. It's interesting to me that we have sort of a little test drive, if you will, as our Chattanooga Housing Authority can tell you, the Fairmount, I believe that's the correct pronunciation, housing project is soon to open. And it's about 200 feet away from Normal Park School. It's across the street from the Center for the Arts School. It's just within walking distance of a gas station. There are banks and a pharmacy nearby, public transportation. So I think we're all, our entire city, going to be very interested in the Normal Park School and what the experience is with the new kids coming there. I want to thank Betsy for being here this afternoon.